Money Never Sleeps is Oliver Stone's follow-up to his 1987 film, which introduced one of the decade's most memorable anti-heroes, Gordon Gekko. Played by Michael Douglas, Gekko single-handedly made braces and contrast collar shirts fashionable and created catchphrases like "lunch is for wimps" and "greed is good." To Stone's horror, his morality tale made working in the city look glamorous and influenced a whole generation of city traders. The original Wall Street ended with Gekko on trial. The sequel takes up the story after he leaves prison after a hefty sentence, apparently a reformed character.
Greed is good. Now it seems it's legal. Because everybody's drinking the same Kool-Aid.
Gekko reinvents himself as a financial guru and makes a splash on the lecture circuit. After 8 years in prison, he's emerged into a world where the banks have got even bigger, but mobile phones have got smaller.
Sometimes it's the only place to stay sane and look out through those bars and say, is everybody out there nuts?
Young trader Jake Moore, played by Shia LaBeouf, is dating Gekko's estranged daughter and seeks him out for help when the investment bank he works for goes into meltdown.
Money never sleeps. And she's jealous. And if you don't pay close attention, you wake up in the morning, she might be gone forever.
But is the seemingly reformed Gekko a reliable ally? Can anyone be trusted when the entire banking system teeters on the edge of collapse?
Your raid destroyed Zabel and forced him to suicide. So you may talk about moral hazard. You are the moral hazard. You are the worst kind of toxic that the system is polluted with.
Alex, this was your world. You were that young Jake. Does Oliver Stone create the right atmosphere that surrounded the crash?
This was such an enormous disappointment to me, this film. I thought it was just execrable. I could not believe that somebody like Oliver Stone, who has built up a reputation for being, a good egg. I watched the South of the Border, his documentary about Chavez. He comes across as a kind of Marxist Alan Partridge. There was an opportunity to really get under the skin of finance, to exactly the clip they just showed, that you just showed there, where Shia LaBeouf says to the Josh Brolin character, you were the worst kind of toxic debt. That is what the film should have been about. When Gordon Gekko comes out of prison, his eyes narrow and then widen, and it's this amazing moment, and it's pure greed, it's mainlining greed, and it should have been about how people caused this problem. Not the ABS, not the SIVs, it's people. And instead it goes off into this bizarre glorification of Wall Street, which I just thought, and with Oliver Stone featuring himself and all of his hedge fund buddies who look after his vast millions, I thought it was disgusting.
Michael, did you have the same kind of visceral reaction to it?
No, I didn't have the same visceral reaction, but I did think it was a disappointing film. And I thought it hung firmly to the coattails of the previous film, so that you kind of have mirror images scene by scene. You have the new version of that scene, and in each case, I think the scene is disappointing by comparison with the last one. Of course, Wall Street 1 ends up with the young trader being taken off in handcuffs in a memorable scene, and you get the feeling that there just aren't the visual images to express the banking meltdown this time. I mean, there is nobody who's taken off in handcuffs. I hope I can say that without giving it away. And there are quite a lot of visual techniques that are used to try to give you some interest. There are lots of numbers that move around the screen in kind of rather interesting ways. But in the end, I thought it lacked all the tension. I mean, that weekend, when we were reading newspapers, watching television, was vastly more tense than watching the movie. Somehow, the movie didn't capture the extraordinariness of that moment.
And we have had films, we've had a television documentary of what actually happened round that table, which, of course, was the Lehman Brothers story, which then is actually repeated here through another bank.
But they had to have this bizarre cock-off on motorbikes immediately afterwards because Oliver Stone was worried that was too dry.
The movie is a cartoon, basically.
Well,
they're all cartoon characters.
Yeah, but I look at finance TV 24 hours a day. I don't look at any other TV.
Oh, boy.
I'm totally in it since the meltdown. I wanted to understand, so I'm on it 24 hours a day. And you're absolutely right, Alex. They didn't capture the obsession, didn't capture the greed, didn't capture the mania. It was like a 1975 flick. I was sitting there going, Oliver, what's going on, man? Did you do this too fast or what?
Well, let's turn to character for a moment and let's talk about Michael Douglas, who was, of course, Gordon Gekko was one of the great characters of the late 80s.
Gordon Gekko was,
Tell me about what you think that the way that he's nuanced the performance now, or not.
Well, Gordon Gekko was the thing that made Wall Street work, if it worked. I watched it the other day, and I don't know if it worked at the time, but it certainly doesn't work now, except for Gordon Gekko. The Gordon Gekko character blazes through the first one.
I'm going to carry on and talk to you in a second about this then. Well, let's just have a quick reprise then. Let's look here. Here he is with Charlie Sheen, his protege, standing, looking out over Manhattan.
You got 90% of the American public out there with little or no net worth. I create nothing. I own. We make the rules, pal. The news, war, peace, famine, upheaval, the price of a paper clip. We pick that rabbit out of the hat while everybody sits out there wondering how the hell we did it. Now, you're not naive enough to think we're living in a democracy, are you, buddy?
It seemed to me that Michael Douglas played it for entertainment this time, and he was an incredibly entertaining watch.
Yeah, well, actually, I thought Michael Douglas was better this time because he only really had one dimension to play last time, which was evil. Greed is good. This time, he came out looking a pretty shattered man, and he had this sort of kinder, more caring sort of hairdo. And as soon as, of course, he started getting back on top, the bro cream came back out, and he became the big bad wolf again. But he's got a daughter in this. He's got an awful lot more to do as a character, but unfortunately the film doesn't really say anything this time.
But does it need to say, because this is the thing, is it because we're all thirsting, but is it all because we're all thirsting to try and make sense of what happened, and that gives the directors a special responsibility?
I think the film is a lie, and I got to hate the film towards the end, because at the end he said everybody wants a bedtime story. Well, the film is a bedtime story. The film is utter, I can't swear because Jonathan Franzen has already sworn, but
Michael.
Well, it's very funny too, isn't it, that it's all about Wall Street, as though none of this had any consequences elsewhere. I mean, what about all the people who lost their houses? What about the people who are sitting on mountains of debt out there? What about all the people who are taking for a ride? I mean, it's rather funny, I think, coming from Oliver Stone, that this whole thing happens at a couple of glass towers with apparently no consequences elsewhere at all.
Except for Shia LaBeouf's mother, who returns to being a nurse from being a real estate.
That's the only time you see real people in the entire... working people in the entire film.
Yeah, but there's something deeper than that. And you gotta let women talk about finance because we never get on screen talking about money. The thing is that this whole thing is it's a mania. It's an obsession. It is not rational. So for Oliver Stone to try and make a story so we can all go home and feel good, it ain't happening. No.
Well, it seems only right that Wall Street Money Never Sleeps gave Oliver Stone his best US opening yet, taking $90 million last weekend, and it's on general release here from next Wednesday. If Oliver Stone has made an entertaining drama out of a real-life economic crisis, the documentary Collapse, premiered at Sundance, centres on an interview with a real-life whistleblower who predicted the crash back in 2006. Admittedly, not the only one who did, but of course no one listened.